Hello everyone, I am very glad that you're joining this story. Subscribe, like and comment. Enjoy the story, smile more often.
The day was supposed to be all soft pastels, crinkling tissue paper, delicate cupcakes with tiny baby feet made of icing, and polite laughter echoing from my mother's living room. I'd imagined it so many times, what it would feel like to be surrounded by people celebrating a new life, this little miracle kicking just under my ribcage. The house smelled like vanilla and lilac, and someone had gone all out with the decorations, tiny socks hanging from twine like bunting, blue and yellow balloons tied to every chair, and the words "Welcome, baby" spelled out in golden glitter letters across the fireplace mantel. But all that sugar and sparkle meant nothing the moment Jenny opened her smug little mouth. It came just as I was reaching for a slice of strawberry shortcake, balancing it awkwardly on a flimsy paper plate with a cartoon giraffe printed on it. Jenny, my husband's older sister and the kind of woman who always thought the room should revolve around her mood, leaned back in her chair, swirling her mimosa like it was a wine tasting and not her fourth drink before noon. She was wearing white, of course. Of all things. A tight white dress at someone else's baby shower, like she'd just wandered in from a bridal boutique and forgot she wasn't the main character today. Then she did it. She tilted her head, gave me that tired little smirk I'd grown to hate, and said it loud enough for the room to fall silent. "Are we sure it's his?" Just like that. 7 words that hit the air like a car crash on a quiet street. The chatter stopped. The sound of the ceiling fan above us became suddenly, painfully loud. Someone, maybe Dave's aunt, let out a small gasp, the kind that sounds more like a hiccup when you're trying to pretend you didn't just hear what you heard. I didn't look at anyone. I just looked at her. Jenny. Legs crossed, lips curled into that serpentine smile, eyes sparkling like she'd just dropped a grenade and was waiting to see who'd lose a limb first. She was enjoying herself, no doubt. Probably thought this moment would break me. Probably thought I'd cry, or scream, or throw my drink at her like some low-budget soap opera meltdown. But I didn't. Instead, I rubbed my belly gently with both hands, like I was soothing the baby, but really, I was steadying myself. I smiled. Slow. Controlled. The kind of smile that made her blink for just a split second, because it wasn't the reaction she'd expected. And then I said, calm, sweet, like honey poured over a knife, "Well, we all know what you're sure of, Jenny." And that's usually wrong. Laughter broke out before anyone could stop it. Nervous, uncomfortable, but it was there. Jenny flushed, her neck blotching red, but she laughed too, like it was all just a harmless joke. Just teasing the pregnant lady. Just Jenny being Jenny. But there was something in her eyes when she looked at me again, something unsure, like maybe, just maybe, I knew something she didn't. The rest of the afternoon was a fog. Smiles pasted on, gifts unwrapped, cards read out loud. But the energy had shifted and everyone felt it. I watched people eyeing me differently, curiously, like I'd suddenly become a puzzle piece they couldn't quite fit. And Dave? He just stood there, awkward and silent, sipping from his red cup and avoiding eye contact with me or his sister. He didn't defend me. Didn't say a damn word. I should have felt humiliated. I was 8 months pregnant, for God's sake, and being publicly questioned by my husband's own sister. But you know what I felt? Relief. That's the thing people don't tell you about betrayal. It's only shocking the first time. After that, you start collecting it like stamps. And this little moment in my living room? It was just one more for the album. Jenny had always been like this, needling, superior, convinced she knew everything about everyone. She hated that Dave had married someone like me. Someone who didn't come from money, who didn't go to college with him, who didn't play by their perfect little family rules. She'd been sniffing around me like a bloodhound since the wedding, waiting to catch a whiff of weakness. The smirk today wasn't new. It had been building for years. But today? Today was the first time she went for blood in public. And I let her. Because I needed her to feel confident. Comfortable. I needed her to believe she'd won. I watched her sipping her drink, laughing too loud, leaning on Dave's shoulder like she used to when we were still new. There was something between them, always had been. Too close. Too cozy. I'd felt it long before I could prove it. You know those glances people give each other when they think no one's watching? I'd caught them more than once. But today wasn't about them. Not yet. As the party wound down and people filtered out, leaving behind crumpled wrapping paper and half-eaten cupcakes, I made my way to the kitchen. Jenny followed, of course, cornered me near the sink like she always did. She leaned in and said, "Did I cross a line? You seemed weirdly calm out there." I wiped my hands on a towel, met her gaze, and leaned in so close I could smell her perfume, expensive and sour. "You should have kept your mouth shut," I whispered, soft and slow. "This isn't going to end the way you think." Her smile faltered, just a flicker, and for the first time in a long time, she looked scared. Good. Looking back, I think I fell in love with Dave the way people fall for movie characters, quick, hard, and without bothering to ask what the script really looked like behind the scenes. He had that easy charm, the kind that wraps itself around you like a warm blanket before you realize you're tangled in it and can't move. When we met, it was a rainy Tuesday in late October, and he'd just spilled his coffee all over my sketchbook at a cafe near my office. He apologized so profusely that I laughed, and then we talked, and then we kept talking until the cafe closed. That night, when he kissed me in the parking lot with wet hair sticking to his forehead and his hands shaking a little, I thought, this is it. For the first year, maybe two, it really did feel like magic. I met his family early on, maybe too early, now that I think about it, and they welcomed me in the way people welcome someone when they're not yet sure whether to like them or pretend to. His parents were quiet and distant, the type who hosted dinners that felt more like interviews. His mother had this way of smiling, just with her mouth, like it hurt to mean it. But it was Jenny who stood up from the start. Jenny was loud, magnetic, the kind of woman who always took up space and made you feel like that was your problem. She'd squeeze my shoulders a little too hard when she hugged me, ask questions that weren't really questions, more like verbal landmines. Things like, did you always want to be an artist, or was that just the fallback, or your parents divorced, right? I heard that can really mess people up emotionally. Dave would laugh it off, tell me she was just being playful, but it never felt like a game to me. It felt like she was digging, testing, looking for a crack. What unsettled me most wasn't just Jenny's behavior, but the way Dave responded to it, or didn't. He let her interrupt him constantly. He answered her calls at 2 in the morning without hesitation. And whenever we had a fight, it was Jenny who knew about it before the door had even stopped shaking from my exit. Once, at a family barbecue, I watched her reach over and take his hand during a conversation. Not a casual sibling gesture, not one of those quick, affectionate taps. She held it, palmed it like a lover would, stroked his knuckles slowly with her thumb while talking about some childhood vacation they'd taken to Lake Michigan. And Dave? He didn't even blink. I told myself I was overreacting. Told myself I was just hormonal because by then I was pregnant. About 8 months and 36 weeks along. Everything felt heavy and swollen, and I was more tired than I'd ever been in my life. I blamed the paranoia on sleep deprivation and the fear that comes when you realize you're about to be responsible for another human being. But something deeper was gnawing at me, something primal, something cold and heavy that made my bones ache. Dave and I had been trying for a while. And when we found out he couldn't, not without help anyway, it broke him in this quiet, slow way. He was too proud to say it out loud, but I saw it in the way he stopped looking at baby clothes, how he pulled away when I touched my belly. He agreed to IVF because I asked, because I needed it, but he never really embraced it. And I had agreed, stupidly, not to tell anyone that the donor wasn't him. We would raise the baby as his, pretend the DNA didn't matter. But DNA has a way of leaking into everything. Into relationships. Into family trees. Into jealousy. Somewhere along the way, I realized I didn't trust him. Not completely. And I definitely didn't trust Jenny. So I did something I'd never told him. I hired a private investigator. Not to follow Dave, not at first. Just to dig around. To look into old connections, weird overlaps. I didn't even know what I was searching for. Maybe peace of mind. Maybe proof I was being paranoid. What I got instead was silence, until today. After the baby shower, when the house was quiet and the confetti had been vacuumed up, I opened my laptop to check my email. There, waiting like a quiet bomb, was a message with no subject line and a single attachment. The email was from the investigator. His name was Kevin, a no-nonsense kind of guy who barely blinked when I handed him a manila envelope with cash and said, "Just tell me what I don't want to know." The subject line was empty, but the file wasn't. It was titled Paternity, Final Results. I stared at it for a long time, my hands hovering over the trackpad, my chest tight. The baby kicked, a little flutter that felt more like a reminder than anything else. I'd thought the worst thing would be finding out Dave had cheated. But something told me this wasn't about cheating. This was about something else entirely. Something deeper, darker. Something I'd already invited into my life without knowing it. And I hadn't even clicked the file yet. The moment my finger clicked open that file, time seemed to slow down like one of those scenes in an old war movie. Muffled noise, blurry vision, heart pounding in my throat like a war drum that wouldn't stop. I don't know what I expected, maybe confirmation of what I already knew, or something twisted and ugly that would at least give me permission to feel what I'd been feeling for months now. But what I got was something far more complicated than a yes or no answer, something that shifted the ground under my feet so completely that I had to sit down before I even got to the second paragraph. The test confirmed what I had always known in my bones, what I had carried in my womb for the past 8 months and 36 weeks. I was the biological mother, of course. But Dave? He wasn't the father. Not genetically, anyway. The baby had come from an anonymous donor, chosen from a stack of sterile profiles with glossy headshots and bullet-pointed traits like artistic and tall and healthy family history. We had picked donor number 7 to 9 because he had Dave's eye color and a calm, decent smile. I remembered the night we chose him, how Dave wouldn't look at the computer screen, how his jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles twitch under his skin. He said, "Just pick someone, I don't care," and walked away while I sat there trying to match a stranger to the man I had married. It wasn't news to me that this baby wasn't Dave's by blood. It was news to him, or it would be if I ever told him. We had agreed not to. He made me promise, said no one would understand, especially not his family, who valued bloodlines like trophies on a shelf. I was the one who had to carry the lie, alone, through every doctor's visit and nursery decoration and late-night name debate. I swallowed it whole every time someone said, "Oh, he'll look just like his daddy," and smiled like I believed it too. And now, staring at that test, all I could think was how ironic it was that Jenny had made her little comment at the shower, trying to humiliate me when the truth was so much more layered than she could have imagined. But that wasn't even the bombshell. That came when I noticed a second attachment in the email, a file I hadn't asked for, one I didn't even know existed. It was labeled in bold, secondary DNA, unsolicited. I hesitated, hovered over it, my gut twisting itself into knots so tight I felt like I might throw up. When I finally opened it, the room tilted. It was another DNA test, one that compared 2 individuals. I didn't recognize the sample IDs at first, but the investigator had added a brief note below the results. His message was short, clinical, and hit harder than anything else I'd read that year. It said, "Confirmed biological relationship. Sample A, David Connors. Sample B, infant, female. Mother listed as Jennifer Connors." It didn't register at first. I read it twice, then a third time, and then I understood. Dave had fathered a child. Recently. With his sister. My breath left me like I'd been punched. I remember looking around the room like I expected someone to jump out and tell me it was a mistake, a joke, some terrible prank caught on camera. But no one came. Just the hum of the fridge and the ticking of the clock above the sink. I was alone with this sickness, this horror I didn't know how to swallow. I had suspected things were off between them, sure. I had noticed the weird closeness, the glances, the long hugs that lingered too long. But never in my wildest, darkest thoughts did I think it would go this far. This wasn't just betrayal. This wasn't just cheating. This was something deeper, something broken and foul and buried under years of family silence and secrets no one ever dared to speak out loud. My husband had fathered a child with his sister. And I had been living in the same house, smiling for pictures, rubbing my belly, calling Jenny Auntie like the goddamn punchline of a sick joke. I don't know how long I sat there, staring at the screen. At some point, the baby kicked again, soft but insistent, and it snapped me out of my spiral. I closed the laptop with shaking hands, feeling like the walls were closing in on me. I stood up, walked into the nursery we had decorated together, and looked at the crib that Dave had built piece by piece, sweating over the instructions, cursing at the screws. It looked so innocent, so clean. I sat down on the edge of the rocking chair and felt the tears finally come, not because I was heartbroken, but because I was furious. And that's when I saw it. On the top shelf of the nursery closet, behind a box of swaddle blankets and a stack of diapers, was a small black case. I don't know what made me reach for it, maybe instinct or maybe God whispering, keep going. I pulled it down, opened it, and found a USB drive inside, wrapped in a scrap of fabric like someone was trying to hide it, but not destroy it. There was a label stuck to one side of the drive, and in thick black Sharpie were the words, "Do not open." I stared at it for a long time, because now, of course, I knew I had to. It took me almost an hour to build up the nerve to plug that USB drive into my laptop, and even then I kept glancing over my shoulder like someone might walk in and catch me holding a truth I hadn't asked for but couldn't ignore anymore. I sat there with my hand hovering over the mouse, my pulse thudding like thunder in my ears, my stomach twisted in the kind of knots that no amount of breathing exercises could unwind. There are moments in life where you know, deep in your bones, that the before and after will never touch again, that you are about to walk through a door and burn the bridge behind you. And this? This was that door. The file on the drive was a video. Just one. No folders, no passwords, no explanation. Just a video file named weekend_lakehouse_2024. I clicked play, and within seconds I felt my soul leave my body. The screen flickered to life, and there it was, the family lake house I'd visited a dozen times, the place where Dave's parents had hosted 4th of July barbecues and Thanksgiving weekends with too much wine and not enough sanity. The place with creaky floors, old quilts, and a dock that always needed staining. But this wasn't a holiday gathering. The camera was stationary, set up on a tripod or shelf, and it faced the guest bedroom, which I recognized instantly from the hideous yellow floral wallpaper. At first, there was just silence. The sound of crickets through an open window. The bed empty. And then they walked in. Jenny. Dave. He was shirtless. She was barefoot. They were laughing like two people completely alone in the world, like they had nothing to hide, nothing to fear. Then he kissed her, and it wasn't the kind of kiss you ever give your sister. It was slow, full of heat, familiar. Their hands went places hands shouldn't go between siblings, and my mouth went dry watching it, my fingers numb on the keyboard. I couldn't even speak. I just sat there, frozen, while the video kept playing, touches, whispers, laughter I couldn't hear but somehow still understood. And it went on. For over 20 minutes, it played out like a bad dream that just kept spiraling deeper into the pit of hell. They didn't just sleep together, they made love like they had been doing it for years. Like this wasn't a one-time mistake, but a regular thing. A sick ritual they'd created under the roof of a family legacy that now felt like a goddamn curse. I closed the laptop so hard the screen almost cracked. Then I sat back, holding my belly, trying not to scream. I didn't cry. I didn't sob or fall apart. What I felt wasn't sadness. It was rage. The kind that comes from years of being gaslit, of doubting yourself, of swallowing your instincts because someone you love says you're being paranoid, or she's just protective, or don't start drama. But the drama was real, and it was sick, and it was staring me in the face with Dave's hands all over his goddamn sister. I stood up, paced the room, almost knocked over the bassinet with my elbow. I had a decision to make: pretend this never happened and raise my baby in a house full of lies, or burn the whole damn thing to the ground. And I'm not the type to keep quiet. Not anymore. First, I called my lawyer. Her name is Margaret, and she's a woman who once told me, if you're going to go to war, wear heels they can hear coming. She answered on the second ring, listened to my voice shake as I laid it all out, no fluff, no censorship. She didn't gasp or stutter. She just said, "We're not calling this a divorce. We're calling it a public decapitation. Send me the footage." Then I got to work. I opened Canva, of all things, and started designing an invitation. Big, bright lettering, balloons, streamers, a little pink and blue confetti graphic. Across the top it said, "You're invited to a very special gender reveal." Then in smaller font underneath, "Join us for an unforgettable surprise." I sent it to every family member, every friend, every person who had ever posted under a photo of us with heart emojis and the words "couple goals." I included Jenny and Dave too. Wouldn't want them to miss their moment. This wasn't about the baby I was carrying anymore. This was about the other one, the one they'd tried to hide, the one conceived out of something so twisted and foul it made my stomach churn just thinking about it. I didn't know if the baby still existed, if Jenny had gone through with it, or hidden it, or lost it. But the test didn't lie. And that footage? That was all the confirmation I needed. I picked the lake house as the venue. Poetic, don't you think? One last family gathering before the whole dynasty collapsed like a rotten deck. I sent the invite out with a date and time, just 2 weeks away, close enough to keep the tension hot, far enough to make sure no one backed out last minute. And when I hit send, I sat back in my chair, felt the baby shift inside me, and whispered out loud to no one but the ghosts of every lie I'd been fed, "Let's see how they like surprises." The day of the party was bright and windy, the kind of spring day that smells like fresh-cut grass and possibility, the air sharp and clean like it knew something was about to break. I stood in front of the lake house, the very same place that had hosted more family lies and polite silences than any single building had a right to, and watched the cars roll in one by one like sheep to slaughter, the guests stepping out with balloons and gift bags, grinning like this was just another baby shower with sugar cookies and bad punch. No one knew what was coming. And that was the point. I wore blue. A long flowing dress that hugged my swollen belly and made me look every bit the glowing, expectant mother they all wanted to see. My hair was curled, makeup done, the whole damn performance dialed up to 11. I greeted people with hugs, thanked them for coming, smiled like a pageant queen while my stomach twisted itself into knots tighter than the ribbon bows stuck to the diaper cake someone brought inside. Dave showed up late, of course. Walked in with that same sheepish charm that had fooled me once upon a time, holding a tray of store-bought cupcakes like he was some helpful husband, like he hadn't buried our marriage in a pile of incestuous lies. Jenny didn't come at first. She was supposed to be out of town, some work thing she'd planned suddenly, conveniently, when the invite went out. But I knew better. Jenny never missed a party where she could make herself the center of attention. And sure enough, halfway through the appetizers, she slipped in through the back gate like a snake avoiding sunlight. She wore black, because of course she did, sunglasses too big for her face, like she thought she could disappear behind them. She smiled when she saw me, tight-lipped and cautious, like she still hadn't figured out what I was planning. She would soon enough. People gathered in the backyard, chatting, sipping champagne, laughing under the string lights we'd hung the night before. The lake sparkled behind them, deceptively peaceful, like it wasn't holding the ghosts of everything I was about to set free. I waited until the moment felt perfect, until people had loosened up, until Dave had let his guard down, until Jenny had started to relax just enough to stop scanning the crowd like she was looking for a sniper. Then I stepped forward and cleared my throat. "Thank you all for coming," I said, loud enough to quiet the chatter. "I know everyone's excited to find out the gender of the baby, but before we pop any balloons or cut any cakes, there's a little video I'd like to share. Just something personal. Something meaningful." I turned and pressed play on the projector screen we'd set up on the side of the garage, the same screen Dave used to show family vacation slideshows, the ones where everyone smiled with clenched teeth and matching shirts. The screen flickered, and then the video began. No warning, no edits, just raw footage. Jenny and Dave. The lake house bedroom. The laughter. The kiss. The gasp that ripped through the crowd sounded like someone had pulled the air straight out of the sky. Someone dropped a drink. A chair tipped over. I didn't move. I just stood there and watched the film roll, watched faces twist and eyes widen and mouths drop open in shock and revulsion. Jenny screamed. Not a word, not a protest, just this sharp, primal noise like an animal caught in a trap. Dave lunged toward the screen like he could physically tear the truth away with his bare hands, but it was too late. I let it play long enough to make the point. Then I turned it off and looked at the people who'd once smiled at me like I was lucky to be part of their perfect little world. "I was accused," I said slowly, letting the words land one by one. "At my own baby shower, I was humiliated. Accused of cheating. Of lying. All while this," I pointed at the now blank screen, "was happening behind my back. In this family. Under this roof." Jenny collapsed. I'm not being dramatic. She actually fainted, hit the grass like a sack of potatoes. No one rushed to help her. Dave just stood there, crying quiet and pathetic and more exposed than I'd ever seen him. His hands trembled, mouth open, like he wanted to say something but didn't know how to form the words. I didn't care. I'd heard enough from him to last me a lifetime. "I never needed his DNA," I said, hand on my stomach, calm as Sunday morning. "I never needed your approval or your doubt or your smug little whispers. I knew who I was. I knew what I was carrying. The question wasn't about me. The question should have been, what the hell's been growing inside your family all these years?" No one spoke. No one moved. I didn't stay long after that. I left the cleanup to them, to the mess they'd made and now had to scrub from every inch of their reputation. I walked out of that backyard with my head high and my baby still safe inside me, untouched by their sickness. As I got in the car and drove away, I glanced in the rearview mirror and watched the lake house shrink behind me, watched people scatter like roaches under a kitchen light, and felt something like peace wash over me for the first time in years. I never found out what happened to Jenny's baby, if she kept it, gave it up, lost it. I never asked. Some things don't need closure. Some endings are better left open like a wound that scabs over without really healing. What mattered was that the truth had been dragged into the sunlight and left there to rot. And me? I had everything I needed. A clean break. A new beginning. And the knowledge that sometimes revenge doesn't look like shouting or smashing things. Sometimes it looks like smiling while you walk away from the fire, knowing you're the one who lit the match. And I never looked back.